Takes.
No, I'm not going to apologize to Ryan Day. Everything we said about Ryan Day up into the playoffs was true.
Not bad. Come on, Kenner. You can do better than that.
To be fair, of all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the least accomplished.
Getting better.
1,000,000%. I 1,000,000% believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them.
There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kenner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, welcome in. Happy Monday. The Justin Kenner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Excited for today's show. A lot to dive into. When I say I'm excited for today's show, I'm not excited to talk Reds, but we do have to jump into the Cincinnati Reds coming up here in just a moment. We're at that weird stage of the season where, I feel like if you are being critical of this team, I'm amazed at how many Reds fans there are that are out there that are getting angry at the negativity that is surrounding the coverage of the Cincinnati Reds. And rather than tell you that you are wrong for thinking that way or tell you that you're just, being delusional when it comes to the real issues with this team, I want to actually just have a conversation as far as what am I missing when it comes to this Reds team right now? What am I missing when it comes to what we're watching on the field and the way we assess it and talk about it? How is what we have seen and what is being talked about with this team, how is that negativity? Because the only negativity that I think is truly out there is the play of the Cincinnati Reds. Cincinnati coming off of that 7-game road trip where they had 4 games at Atlanta, 3 games in Houston. They had a chance to close out that Braves series with the split after getting pummeled in games 1 and 2. They end up rallying, unfortunately, after an injury to Hunter Green, which has knocked him out for for a week, 2 weeks, hopefully not more than that. We'll talk more about that later. But the Reds bounce back. They get a win in game 3 against the Braves with Nick Lodolo on the mound. I thought that they had a chance to split that series and take some momentum into Houston. No momentum, no split, no momentum. And no series win against the Astros either. The Reds, of course, do what the Reds do. They sprinkle in a game offensively where it just inflates all their stats for the season. And then they come crashing back down to earth. I mean, they put 13 runs up on the board in game 2 against the Astros. Keep in mind, they get shut out in game 1, 3-0. They put up 13 runs in game 2. They win 13-9. And then after putting up 13 runs on the board in game 2, they get shut out 6-0 yesterday. It's the Reds are 0-4 coming off of games where they score double-digit runs in a game. They lose the next game every time. It's frustrating because who are the Cincinnati Reds? They are top 13 in every major offensive statistical category. But you watch this team physically with your eyes, and this is one of the worst offenses in Major League Baseball. Elliott said it today on Off the Bench that the Reds have had 7 games. They've been shut out 7 times this season, and they have had 11 games this season where they have scored 1 run or less. And we are 40. How many games into the season are we? 42. 42 games into the season. 11 of the 42 games, the Reds have been held to 1 run or less. Oofa. 7 of those 42 games, the Reds have been held scoreless. They've been shut out. Oofa. I mean, absolutely brutal as far as that's concerned. Things just keep getting worse when it comes to the Cincinnati Reds as the season goes on. A lot of people in the YouTube chat for Off the Bench earlier today were very critical of not the Reds, but of us, saying that we were way too critical of this Reds team, that it's just nothing but bashing the Cincinnati Reds. And I guess the question that I have is, where's the line between being critical of a team that has gone 2-5 in their last 7 games? You drop 3 or 4 at Atlanta and drop 2 or 3 at Houston. And that's after dropping 2 or 3 at home against the Nationals. And that's after splitting with the Cardinals team that you should have easily taken at least 3 or 4 from. I don't think that we're being negative whatsoever. I think that we're being realistic. But I want to know what I'm missing. What are the positive stories with this team that we don't touch on and highlight? Because I feel like I do a pretty good job of highlighting this pitching staff. I am constantly singing the praises of this pitching staff. I am really, honestly, I think we can all agree Hunter Green, hopefully he's healthy and can pitch a lot of games this year. He's going to be right there in the mix of things for the Cy Young. And I think the better the Reds are, the higher of a chance that he has of actually winning it. But if the Reds are bottom of the barrel, battling it out with the Pirates to who's going to finish last in the division, I don't think that does him any favors. We highlight the strength of this Reds team all the time. When Trevino was, playing lights out, I've brought up the fact that he's been, I've highlighted the strength of him. I talked about the depth that the Reds have when it comes to the catcher position. Talked about when people talk about this pitching staff, they talk so much about the rotation that we forget about as a whole, from top to bottom, rotation into the bullpen. It's a pretty damn good unit. We've talked about the strength of this team being the depth that they have when it does come to pitching. So I would love to know, in what universe are we being too negative? The one example I gave on the show earlier today, it's not as if the Reds had won 10 straight, but then I crack the mic and say, they've won 10 straight, but they should have lost game 2. Game 6, if you think of that, win number 6 of the 10 straight wins, they were going up against a team that had their whole lineup out. So that one doesn't really count. So this Reds team's not as good as, what the 10-game winning streak says. No, that would be negativity in my eyes. Pointing out that a team that continuously underachieves, that has one of the best pitching staffs in baseball and doesn't really have anything to show for it. In fact, they only continue to plummet more and more when it comes to the standings. A lot of you keep saying you don't care about the standings, and I've said before, I don't care if you don't care about the standings. I do. The Reds, 3.5 games back of the division. The Chicago Cubs actually play the easiest schedule in baseball for the month of May, and that continues. 3.5 back of the Cubs in the NL Central. You look at the wild card. The Cincinnati Reds are now 4.5 games back of that wild card spot, a spot that not even 2 weeks ago the Reds were in the wild card, in that second to last wild card spot. Yes, I do think that being negative and being realistic and being critical are all part of covering this Cincinnati Reds team, and I think it's all part of being a fan. I just don't get it. Troy on Facebook. Again, we're live on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. The Justin Kinner Show, by the way, presented by our friends over at Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. I'll tell you about a couple of their great lunch specials that you'll have to keep an eye out for throughout the week here in just a moment. But reacting to the Reds coming out of the weekend, things go from bad to worse. 2-5 was their record over that 7-game road trip where they had to go to Atlanta for 4 and Houston for 3. They dropped 3 of 4 against Atlanta. And almost got swept. I mean, you think with Hunter Green going out in the 4th inning, there was a lot of innings for that bullpen to cover. Luckily, they did it. There was enough offensive, run production for them to come away victorious to avoid the sweep. But then they dropped 2 of 3 against the Astros, where they don't get just shut out once, but shut out twice. You get shut out 3-0 in game 1. You put 13 runs up on the board in game 2, and then you lose 6-0 in game 3. The Reds are a yo-yo. Up and down, up and down, up and down. It's frustrating. But Troy on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page says only will get worse rest of May and June. The schedule is brutal. Look, I think there's opportunities in May to kind of ride the ship a little bit. You have 3 with the White Sox. You have 3 with the Pirates. In fact, I have it right here. Take a look at this. They have 3. And again, you have 3 with the White Sox at home. You welcome the Guardians in this weekend. You have 3 with Pittsburgh, but you do have the Cubs for 6 the games in a 9-day stretch to close out the month of May. We're wrapping up the month of May here in a few weeks. It's pretty wild, guys. Wow. Yeah. But then Troy, where I agree with you, the month of June is insanely brutal. The month of June, you welcome in Milwaukee, who owns you. You welcome in the Diamondbacks, who are, if they didn't play in the West, would probably be leading every division in baseball right now. Arizona's not, that's just the West in the National League is pretty damn deep as far as that's concerned. The Diamondbacks right now, they're 21 wins on the season. They're right there in the mix of things. They're battling it out with the Giants and others. Maybe I gave the Diamondbacks a little bit too much love there, but the bottom line is that's not an easy series whatsoever for the Reds. Then the Reds have to play Cleveland again. Okay, and they have to do it in Cleveland. Cleveland right now, 23-17. They're at the top of the wild card standings over in the American League. Then you got to play Detroit. Detroit, arguably the best team in the American League. Then you got to play St. Louis again on the road. Then you got the Yankees, and you have the Padres. And the Padres are sitting atop the National League wildcard standings as we currently sit here at 25-14. And that's one of the best teams in baseball. The only reason they're sitting in the wild card right now is because, well, you unfortunately have to play in a division with the damn Dodgers. So, yes, Troy, I guess I see your point. Yeah, I'm gonna step out of that debate. You win that one. The schedule coming up is brutal, and it does have the potential to go from bad to worse if it doesn't already feel like it as far as that goes. Ron Howard on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. It's a sure bet when the Reds have a big stat day, the Reds lay an egg the next game. Stats show for this. Yeah, so. And that's what we were talking about earlier is like the Reds are 0-4 when they score double-digit runs. They are 0-4 the very in the game following that offensive performance. It's like they put all their work into one game and say, well, we've done enough for this series, and then they check out. But, I mean, I don't know what's more impressive, putting up 13 runs, to be as bad as you are offensively and put up 13 runs, or to be shut out in 2 or 3 games. They've been shut out 7 times this season, 11 times this season, 1 run or less has been scored. The Reds are a very tough team to figure out. They're a very tough team to watch. They're a very tough team to pull for and cheer for. And I guess after all of that, the big question I have for everybody who's tuning in right now, whether you're watching on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page or you're listening live on 1410 Wing AM or at wingam.com on the iHeartRadio app, however you're listening, the question I have is, how am I being negative? How are my guys on Chatterbox on Off the Bench? How are they being negative when it comes to the way we approach this team? What is there to be positive about? The big question I have is I'm willing to admit, I'm willing to admit if we're being negative. I don't think that we are. For us to be negative, we need to have to be wrong about something. What have I said about the Reds that is wrong? What have I said about the Reds that you disagree with? What about this team do you feel good about, I guess, is the real question. If you feel good about this Reds team, if there's something about this team that you feel like we are overlooking, 937-518-1410. I'm going to unlock. All right, phone lines are unlocked. By all means, 937-518-1410. Are we right on, spot on with our criticisms and critiques of this team? Or is there some positive talking points that we are overlooking? 937-518-1410. I'm curious your guys' thoughts. The Reds, again, drop 5 of 7 on the road last week. And into the weekend, dropping 3 of 4 at Atlanta, dropping 2 of 3 against the Houston Astros. They do put up 13 runs in Game 2 against the Astros. They win 13-9, but they get shut out 3-0 in Game 1 and 6-0 in Game 3. If that series right there, it's a perfect reflection of the Reds in 2025. Big offensive outburst in Game 2, 13 runs, a ton of hits, shut out in Game 1 and shut out in Game 3. That Astros series is a perfect depiction of who the Reds are in 2025, at least up to this point of the season. Are we too negative? Can we be more positive? If so, what do we need to be more positive about? The floor is yours. 937-518-1410, the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. We'll be right back.
Kevin Kamara and Big Kev bring you Dayton's only local sports talk show dedicated to professional wrestling. Don't miss Cards Subject to Change. Every Thursday night at 6 p.m. right here on 1410 ESPN Radio and on the iHeartRadio app.
All right, the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We're going to be at Frickers in Huber Heights coming up this Friday for a live version of show. Again, we're taking the Justin Kinner Show live on the road this Friday at the Frickers in Huber Heights. 3 to 5 will be there again at the Frickers in Huber Heights. Once a month, we take the show out on the road, and just a great opportunity to hit different spots throughout the city and a chance to meet a lot of our loyal listeners. We always appreciate being able to put some faces with the names of those who interact in the chat or call into the show and been loyal listeners for years. So I appreciate you guys. We're going to be on the road again this Friday, Huber Heights location for Frickers. And that's coming up later on this week, this Friday from 3 to 5. Stop on out at one of your local neighborhood Frickers for their Frickin' Lunch combos for $10.99. The Frickin' Lunch combo features many options such as Frickin' Chicken Chunks, cheeseburgers, the charbroiled chicken wrap, and the Frickin' Chicken Wrap. You also get a side and a drink, all for $10.99. The Frickin' Lunch combo is available Monday through Friday between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Dine in or carry out. Keep that in mind. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Cincinnati Reds are off today, although it does seem like they've been off for a while. Especially they were off for 2 of the 3 matchups against the Houston Astros. They do put 13 runs up on the board in Game 2. They win 13-9, but you get shut out and lose Game 1 3-0, and then you cap it off with a 6-0 shutout loss against the Astros in Game 3. This all after dropping 3 of 4 on the road against the Atlanta Braves. They had a very impressive win in Game 3 against the Braves. When you lose Hunter Green in the 4th inning, now you have to rely on the bullpen to cover a lot of innings down the stretch. And unfortunately for the Reds, they were able to get that. And there was some run support to kind of give them a little bit of a cushion. But then they dropped Game 4 against the Braves. And that means you drop 3 of 4. It's going from bad to worse for the Reds. So 3.5 back of the Cubs in the NL Central. They are 4.5 games back in the National League wild card standings as we sit here right now. Teams ahead of them, well, you have the Brewers, the Diamondbacks, the Cardinals, the Giants, the Phillies, and the Padres. Those are all the teams that are ahead of the Reds right now when it comes to the NL standings, when it comes to the wild card, and even when it comes to the division at this point. I mean, the Cubs are division leaders. There's only one team worse than the Reds in the division, and that's the Pirates. It's not saying much. And the Cardinals and Brewers are the 2 teams that I thought the Reds were better than, but yet they're looking up at the Cardinals, which is inexcusable. 22-19, the Cardinals, 3 games above 500. They've won 8 straight. The Cardinals are one of the hottest teams in baseball right now. They're 8-2 in their last 10. Good for the Cardinals. I remember watching the Reds and Cardinals and looking at that lineup and some of the guys they have in that rotation. I'm like, I feel like this Cardinals team, there's a reason they haven't blown up that roster. There's a lot of really good players on that roster. I think they're kind of afraid to hit the nuke button when it comes to blowing up that roster. But my goodness, it's just kind of one of those situations where the Cardinals always find ways to win. It's like, that's what drives me nuts. For the Cardinals, they just accidentally win games. The Cardinals are not supposed to be good this year. They didn't add anything in the offseason. They spent their offseason started with their ownership group coming out and saying, don't expect any major changes to the, in the offseason, that they're not going to spend any money. This is not the same type of approach that the Cardinals organization has had from when I was growing up, in the 2000s, 2010s, where that was like the staple of baseball. That was like they were like the San Antonio Spurs and the New England Patriots. Obviously the Cardinals not winning as many championships as those teams, but they were just that constant. No matter how many players they lost or drafted or developed, they were always just a constant. And the Cardinals are doing that now. Now the Reds, who have more star power on this roster than the Cardinals, it's like everything just has to be absolutely perfect for them to get wins. And that's just that. To me, that's a reflection, and not a good one, of the organization, because to me, they're just not winning, is not in their DNA. And people say, what are you talking about? This team has a championship reputation. You think about the Big Red Machine. You think about the one they won in 1990. Oh, you mean the one that was 35 years ago? I mean, it's 2025. That was 35 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't a champion. There's no championship DNA in this organization anymore, especially since the Castellinis bought it. Ron, that's actually a better comparison. Thank you. Yeah, not the pay. The Cardinals or the Steelers of Major League Baseball. Thank you. The Cardinals have kind of gone that Steeler route. That's a much better comparison where they just win. The Steelers just win. It's annoying. Like but it's an organization that doesn't go all in to win, just like the Cardinals don't, but they just win games. And then the Reds, they semi go in, they add pieces, they draft well, they develop well, but they don't win. You go get a Terry Francona, that's made zero difference in my opinion. I think if David Bell's the manager of this Reds team, I think the Reds are sitting with pretty much the same exact record, with the same exact flaws, with the same exact question marks, because this team is basically the same team as a year ago. Same exact team, right? The pitching's way better. All right. You went out and added a Brady Singer. Obviously, Nick Martinez is we knew what his role was coming into the season. Yeah. Hunter Green, unfortunately hurt now, but last year it took Hunter Green a couple months before he kind of came into his own a little bit, but he started out the season hot. Nick Lodolo's been consistent. That's been a good thing. But overall, moving on from David Bell did nothing for this team, and no offense to Terry Francona, who I love, adding Terry Francona hasn't done anything for this team either. And that's the unfortunate thing when it's all said and done. What up, Raj? Roger on YouTube says the Reds will score as many runs today as they did Friday and Sunday. Absolutely. They don't play today. They're off today, and they're still going to end the day with as many runs as they did in 2 of the 3 games against the Astros over the weekend. Roger did say that they were 17-23 at this point last year, which is wild because if last year 17 and 23 was their record last year at this time. The Reds today are 4.5 games back, 3.5 back in the division, 4.5 back in the wild card. They're sitting a game under 500 or 2 games at 20-22. A 3-game improvement, and I think that 3-game improvement, a lot of that just has to do with the fact that the pitching is better, significantly better than a year ago. But defensively, not that much better. Offensively, I know statistically from where they're kind of slotted and ranked offensively throughout baseball, they're offensively, when you look at the stats, this Reds team is significantly better offensively than they were a year ago. But my goodness, these numbers are inflated because of those 4 games where they've had those outbursts of runs. You got to think about that Orioles game where they put up 24. They put up 3 touchdowns and a field goal. That offensive outburst has carried the numbers and the statistical lines for this team ever since. Shout out to our guy, Sam LeCure, big Sam LeCure guy. Love when he comes on. I did disagree with him on one thing, though, last week when he said he feels like the people who are critical of this team just look at the box score, that they don't actually watch the games. And respectfully to him, I disagree with him. I think the people that look at the box score actually think this team is good. And I think that the people that actually watch this team, no, they're not. And that's all due respect to Sam LeCure. He played the game. He's, he knows way more about the game than I do. But I disagreed with him because when he said he was getting frustrated with those who were saying that this team is bad and that they've been very, very critical. And he said he's convinced that people aren't watching the games, that they just look at the box score. Well, when you look at the box score and you look at the stats, all I see is a team that is just getting dominant starting pitching. They have 18 quality starts on the season. I think that's the 3rd most. Only 2 other teams have more quality starts from their rotation. So you look at that. You look at the bullpen numbers. They're top 10 bullpen in baseball. You look at the fact that this team is top 13 in every major offensive statistical category. To me, if you just go look at those things, oh yeah, this team's not as bad as what everyone's making it out to be. They're actually pretty good. I think it's the box score and the stat watchers that are having the mindset of, I don't think this team is as bad as everyone's saying. And I think it's the people that he was critical of. He said he could tell that nobody's watching the games. I'm watching the games. And what I'm watching does not equate to what those numbers are telling us. The numbers say this is one of the best offensive teams in baseball. For those listening, raise your hand. Does this look like one of the best offensive teams in baseball? Because they're not. Because we watch the games. I mean, damn, getting shut out 2 times in 3 games against an opponent, getting shut out 1-0 in 3 straight games earlier in the season. They've been shut out 7 times. We're not, what's the date? We're not even at the midway point of May. They've been shut out 7 times. That's one of the best offensive teams in baseball. No way. I don't see how that's the case. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Again, we're going to be live at Frickers in Huber Heights coming up this Friday from 3 to 5. We'll have more on that coming up here in a bit. The Cincinnati Reds off today. They'll be back at it tomorrow, game 1 against the Chicago White Sox. And that's a team right now that when you look at where the White Sox fall into play, this might just be what the doctor ordered. I mean, the Reds need a bad team like this to come in so they could beat up on them a little bit to maybe get some of their confidence back. But the White Sox are 12-29. They are 9.5 games back in the wild card. And from a division standpoint, well, they're dead last. They're 14 games back of the Tigers in the Central and the American League. Yeah, I don't think the White Sox are a true contender for anything this season. They were historically bad last year, and then all of a sudden it looked like no team would ever be worse than the White Sox. And then the Rockies are like, hold my beer. The Rockies only 7 wins to this point. The Rockies have 7 wins as of today, May 12th. As of today, May 12th, the Rockies have 7 wins. 5 of those wins are at home. 5 of those wins are at home. I mean, these are bad teams. The Reds beat up on the Rockies. That's good. You know, they're beating up on the bad teams. They beat up on the Pirates, and now they have a chance to beat up on the White Sox to take some momentum into the Guardian Series as they welcome Cleveland to Great American Ballpark coming up this weekend. The good thing is the Reds do have 3 with the Pirates, and they do have to go to Pittsburgh. It'd be nice for the Reds to take 2. All 3 would be nice. They'd go on the road, take at least 2 of 3 from Pittsburgh, and that sets up that ginormous series. I think that series with the Cubs will tell us everything we need to know about this team, in my opinion. To be honest, I said that about last week's stretch, and I think it did tell us a lot about who this team is. Not very good, but they do have a chance to get healthy and bounce back, beat up on the White Sox. All right, don't get destroyed by the Guardians. You have the Pirates next week, and then it sets up that series where the Reds should get Hunter Green back, but they'll have 3 with the Cubs at Great American Ballpark, 3 at Kansas City where they'll take on the Royals, and then they'll go to Chicago to take on the Cubs for 3 on May 30th, 31st, and June 1st. We are flying by. As far as the pitching schedule is concerned for the Reds, again, off today. This is a spot that we would normally see Hunter Green in, but because he's out, Andrew Abbott, due to the off day, they're going to restructure the rotation a bit. Andrew Abbott is going to pitch tomorrow night against the White Sox. White Sox Reds, 6:40 the first pitch, 6:10 pregame coverage begins right here on Dayton's radio, home for the Reds, 1410 Wing AM. Andrew Abbott going to be on the mound for game 1. Nick Lodolo will pitch game 2 against the White Sox on Pete Rose night. And then Nick Martinez will be on the mound on Thursday for a 12:40 first pitch, and that'll be the series finale and the final matchup between the Reds and White Sox before the Reds welcome in the Cleveland Guardians starting on Friday into the weekend. Then they'll be at Pittsburgh next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then they'll have the Cubs on Friday, May 23rd. So that's what's coming up as far as the Cincinnati Reds are concerned. Roger says the White Sox are better than the Rockies. I mean, I think there's some little league teams in town that are better than the Rockies. The Rockies are horrible, Roger, as far as that's concerned. But nonetheless. All right, let's talk about that other team in Cincinnati. Let's talk about your Cincinnati Bengals. They're exhausting, man. Like, they don't know how to get out of their own way. It's really annoying. I mean, you can call me a Bengals hater. That's fine. But, like, I feel like if you are a Bengals fan that can't comprehend how ridiculously moronic the Bengals front office is, I don't know what to tell you. And this is a guy that's a fan of an organization that gave the very first fully guaranteed contract of that magnitude to a quarterback that has played, 12 games in 3 years for the Cleveland Browns. I know what a bad front office is. But I'm a fan of a team that has a front office that makes bad mistakes, but they make mistakes while trying to win games. The Cincinnati Bengals, all they do is they create their own hazards. They create their own roadblocks. I don't understand it. I don't get why the Cincinnati Bengals have to make everything so damn difficult. And this isn't just about the Trey Hendrickson debacle, but we will talk about that when we come back. Trey Hendrickson strategically came out earlier this afternoon and updated Adam Schefter, ESPN, and the world regarding what's going on with the contract negotiations as Hendrickson pushing for an extension. The NFL sack leader. Will it get done? It doesn't sound like it. An update out of Cincinnati. Plus, you got their 2 top draft picks who are not out on the field right now for the Bengals because of, well, contractual headbutting, if you will. And we'll talk about that when we come back. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. We'll talk Bengals next. All right, and we are back. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. I want to give a shout out to our partners over at Titan Graphics. Titan Graphics is the Miami Valley's choice for custom screen printing, embroidery, laser engraving, and promotional products. Place your order today. TitanGraphics.com. Titan Graphics responsible for all of our promotional items that we give away at live shows, like our t-shirts, koozies, all of our signage and banners, including the banners and signage behind us here in studio. We love working with Titan Graphics. We've been working with them for years and years now, and anything we have needed, they have hooked us up and got us taken care of, and they do it with a quick turnaround time, and they'll do the same for you, whether you're working in HR or you're a business manager and you're in charge of getting an order placed for your company. If you're a coach and you're trying to get rosters and jerseys put together for your team, whatever it is, whatever you need, they will get you taken care of. Again, give our friends over at Titan Graphics a call today. Titan Graphics, the Miami Valley's choice for custom screen printing, embroidery, laser engraving, and promotional products. Place your order today at TitanGraphics.com. We open up the show talking Reds. I do want to transition over to the Cincinnati Bengals quick, because the Bengals, this is supposed to be a quiet off season now. This is like, the Bengals really aren't supposed to be very interesting. And the Bengals just can't help themselves. They love to be interesting, and for all the wrong reasons. There comes a certain point where it becomes exhausting. Every single time it comes time to sit down and negotiate with the player, it has to turn messy. And it's not like these players are asking for anything outlandish or ridiculous. They're just asking to be paid market value. I love an opportunity to jump on the Bengals and bury the Bengals anytime I can, but I'm not burying the players themselves. The players are the victims in this, and usually I'm more pro-organization. I'm not a big fan of players bullying an organization or the league as a whole. We see that a lot in the NBA more than other sports. Baseball does it a lot too. It happens in all sports, don't get me wrong. But I'm usually more pro-organization because, and I'm in the minority on that. I've always said you as fans should be pulling for the organization, not the player. If the player wins, that impacts you as a fan, because that's going to make things more difficult for your organization to put talent on a roster. You should be pulling for your organization to hold on to as much cash as possible so that they can use it elsewhere on the roster. The problem for the Cincinnati Bengals, the reason that they test my logic with that, is that they don't operate that way. They don't try to save $1 so that they can go and use that to better and improve other spots of the roster. They just want to save money, which sounds ridiculous to criticize. You should never criticize anybody for wanting to save money, but I don't care about their money. I care about winning. And if I'm a Bengals fan, I don't care about Mike Brown's money or Katie Blackburn's money or anybody's money. I care about my team winning freaking football games. And it's hard to win football games when the Bengals don't do everything in their power to financially compensate and take care of players. Now, you're probably saying, Kinner, what in the hell are you talking about, dude? They just got done paying Joe Burrow 2 off seasons ago, making him the highest paid quarterback in the history of the National Football League at the time. You are right. They did. What are you talking about, Kinner? They just made Jamar Chase the highest paid non-quarterback in the history of the National Football League. In fact, they have him and Joe Burrow on the roster. What are you talking about? Of course they spend money. You're right. They did pay him. Hey, they spend $70 million a season now moving forward over the next 3 or 4 years on 2 wide receivers. What do you mean the Bengals are cheap and they don't spend money? Oh, they spend money, but they spend it really ridiculously stupid. And it has nothing to do with whether I thought they should have given T. Higgins an extension or not. There is nobody with a brain in that front office that understands the business side of this. Outside of, they think good business is them saving money. They don't look at these athletes as human beings. They're just commodities. They don't think about the mental, the mental stuff that has an impact on this team. You don't realize the noise and distractions you create in a locker room by continuously putting up your own roadblocks. For instance, before I get to this Trey Hendrickson thing, how about the fact that as we sit here right now, their top 2 draft picks in rounds 1 and 2 have not practiced in these little rookie mini camps? Shamar Stewart was made to look like the bad guy over the weekend when he was asked why he's not out on the football field. He said he's not going to practice until he gets his contract done, which fully guarantees his money during the rookie contract run. Of course, that's very, very important. But these are pretty standard contracts. And the Bengals are trying to rework how he gets the money and how much of the guaranteed money he gets, and they're coming in well below what the 17th overall pick got in last year's draft. Mike Florio writes that there's no reason for any team to force any player to assume even the slightest amount of risk. For first-round picks, all 4 years are fully guaranteed. Once the player signs, the injury risk then shifts back to the team where it should be. Per a source with knowledge of the situation, the Bengals did try to get Stewart signed. The Bengals, however, they came in short on what he should have been getting based on what the number 17 pick in last year's draft got. It's the percentage of compensation in future years to be paid as a training camp roster bonus, which is just typical standard practices around football. This isn't difficult stuff. You draft a first rounder knowing, okay, whatever position you pick, you know what the market is for that particular position group, the slotting of where you picked in the draft. All of this isn't hard. Why is that everything the Bengals touch have to be messy and difficult? Why do they do this? They are seriously a joke of a franchise. They do not deserve Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Trey Hendrickson. We're going to talk about Trey in a moment. This franchise stinks, guys. I'm sorry. You can call me a Bengals hater all you want. You can make a Browns joke all you want. The Browns are a joke of an organization and will be viewed as that until they finally win or go at least on a playoff run or show that they, figured out the quarterback situation. The Browns have a lot of work to do. That does not erase or take away from the fact that the Bengals, I think, are even in a worse situation than the Browns, because it's one thing when you can't find a way to win when you don't have the right pieces. What's even more pathetic is when you have the right pieces and then can't find a way to win then either. Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals have not been in the playoffs for 2 years now. 2. And this was a stretch where he gets drafted. Year 2, he's in the playoffs. Year 2, he's in the Super Bowl. Year 3, he's in the playoffs. Year 3, he's in the AFC Championship game. Year 4, he's injured out of the playoffs. Year 5, healthy, plays every single game, but this team's roster has significantly gotten worse each and every year because this team can't draft, they can't develop, and they don't have the means to go out in the free agent market and attract legitimate difference makers in the free agent market. And the one time that they did do it, Trey Hendrickson, they're rattling that cage as well, and they're looking to say goodbye to him after this upcoming season as well. He may say goodbye to them first. But when it comes to drafting rookies, playing hardball with Shamar Stewart makes absolutely no sense to me. What are you doing? Duke Tobin, Katie Blackburn, Mike Brown, Brown family in general. What are you guys doing? It's pathetic. It's always something. If the Eagles did this, it wouldn't even be a storyline because the Eagles front office has proven they know how to build champions. That's a championship front office that everything you do, even if you don't agree with it, you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt because it's the Eagles and they are a very well-run organization. The Bengals, and by the way, to be fair, for context, there's a lot of rookies who have yet to sign their contracts. Now, they are out on the field practicing, but they trust the organization that they're working with. To me, this says Shamar Stewart and company, there is no good faith that anyone has with the Bengals front office to trust that they would do the right thing. Hey, we haven't dotted the I's and crossed the T's and getting this contract done, but I know in good faith, I'm going to be taken care of over the next 4 years, so I'm going to go practice anyways. Shamar Stewart's like, no, I don't trust the Brown family. I don't trust this Bengals organization. Roger on YouTube. What up, Raj? She says Cincinnati just can't have nice things. No, they can have nice things. They just can't keep nice things. They don't deserve nice things. You get a Hunter Green and the Ellie De La Cruz, you refuse to financially invest into the franchise to build around them to put a winner out on the field. You get a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and a T. Higgins and a Trey Hendrickson that fell into your lap, and instead of investing into it to make sure that you put a contender out there, you're nickel and diming every single piece on this roster, including your draft picks, which makes no sense. They've done all the contractual homework for you. You just got to slide it across the table for them to sign. What are you nickel and diming rookie contracts for, Brown family? I don't get it. Everything they do, they create their own messes. This Trey Hendrickson situation, it's their own mess that they created. The Jamar Chase mess last year. At first I was pro Bengals on that. Jamar Chase stopped throwing a temper tantrum, get out there. But then we find out that the Bengals approached him. And by the way, that should have been easy as well. Jamar Chase was telling you publicly what he wanted in his contract. Second, Justin Jefferson signs his to reset the market. That's what he's going to get paid, right? All you had to do was slide it across the table. No, they lowballed him. They came in under. You came in under what Justin Jefferson was making in Minnesota and wonder why he sat out of training camp last year. I was anti-Jamar Chase during that. As more details come out, heck no. The Bengals, bunch of idiots in that front office. All of them. Oh, Kenner, those in the Bengals front office will forget about, they'll forget more football than you'll ever know. Based on what? Based on what? When a rookie is drafted, there's a rookie pay scale. Slide that damn thing across the table. Let them sign it. And then they can get out there and get better and practice and get prepared for the upcoming season. And you can go and brag that you work in a front office of an organization that's a legit Super Bowl contender. Instead, you just continue to prove why you're an embarrassment of an organization in football. You're lowballing your rookies on a set standard rookie pay scale wage. Like what is going on? The Jamar Chase thing didn't have to be difficult. You made it difficult. T. Higgins, that didn't have to be difficult. Your makeshift GM just could have kept his mouth shut and not made dumb comments like it's not our job to improve other teams around football. Well, how about you improve your team, sir? You could have traded T. Higgins and got a lot of draft capital back, and the $30 million a year you're spending on him could have been put elsewhere. But no, there's no trust that the money you would have saved by not extending T. Higgins would have been used in the roster, because what did you do with the money with Jesse Bates? I was in support of the Bengals front office not going the route of paying Jesse Bates, because you don't really – winning contending teams don't heavily invest into the safety position really, unless it's a luxury opportunity. The Bengals weren't in a position to have a luxury situation at that point. I didn't mind it. But what do they do with the money? With the money that they saved from not giving the extension to Jesse Bates, which is still a clear weakness of this team to this day, so they were still wrong for that. What do they do with that money? It just came out last week that they had, obviously, Zach Moss had his contract restructured. It freed up a couple million for them there. $1.5 million was freed up with the safety and Geno Stone, so they restructured his contract. They freed up $1.5 million there. And a lot of it was, they're freeing up that money because they're probably going to get a deal done with Trey Hendrickson. Maybe not a true extension, but at least make sure he's very highly compensated for this upcoming season. But then we find out that there has been absolutely zero communication between the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson's camp. So what are you freeing up all this money for? You're not going to go after any of the big available free agents. You're clearly not going to take care of Trey Hendrickson on your roster. You're trying to lowball your rookies. Like, what are you doing with the money that you're saving? I could see if you have to rob Peter to pay Paul. That's a annoying business practice that exists everywhere. Hey, I got to lowball you, but the money I save, I have to use for a bigger investment over here. That's fine, but they're not even doing that. They're just robbing Peter and they're making fun of Paul. They're not even paying Paul. They're robbing Peter, laughing at Peter, and then laughing at Paul, poor Paul over here, who's not getting any money. Like, they make zero sense in how they operate with all of this. It is, you guys could call me a hater. You could just say, oh, Kinner's, it's the I Hate the Bengals show. Call it whatever you want. But you know damn well that your organization's an embarrassment. They really are. They are a pathetic organization. Say what you want about the Browns. They're trying to get the right players to win. That's what makes them a joke. But when you have the right players and you still can't find a way to win, and you still show zero urgency to enhance this roster, you're a joke. Cincinnati Bengals are a joke. And this Trey Hendrickson, the way they've handled this has been a disaster. And then handling the rookies the way they have, making Shamar Stewart look like the bad guy. Like, I can't believe the rookie's out there practicing with his teammates. Every other rookie's out there, most rookies don't have to deal with their organization lowballing them the way that the Bengals did when these are set rookie contracts. It's standard stuff, and they take standard and easy and make it more difficult than it has to be. The Cincinnati Bengal way. Unbelievable. The Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers.
SelectQuote.com/commercials.
Hey everybody, it's Stephen A. Smith, and everyone knows my feelings on Cowboys fans. But really, Justin Kenner, you're a Cowboys fan and a Browns fan? Good Lord have mercy. I don't know what the hell to do with y'all. I really don't.
It's the Justin Kenner Show with Kev Nash. Weekdays from 3 to 6 p.m. on 1410 ESPN Radio. Do you want hot takes?
No, I'm not going to apologize to Ryan Day. Everything we said about Ryan Day up into the playoffs was true.
Not bad. Come on, Kenner. You can do better than that.
To be fair, of all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the least accomplished.
Getting better.
1,000,000%. I 1,000,000% believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them.
There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kenner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, hour number 2, the Justin Kenner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. A lot of time on the Reds and the Bengals in that opening hour. More Bengals as we kick off hour number 2 as well. We talked about the drama that exists right now with why we don't see Shamar Stewart, the Bengals the first round draft pick, 17 overall, Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. Again, not participating in these rookie mini camps as of right now because the contract is yet to get done. If it has got done since I've been yapping here on the air, my apologies, but that's what has led to his absence and not being out there with his teammates. And a lot of people were beating up on Shamar Stewart over the weekend, including me. I thought that wasn't necessary. I thought he needed to get out there. And then you find out that, look, with these first round draft picks, their money is all guaranteed for 4 years. And there's just a set standard rate, market rate when it comes to these guys. I don't know who was pick 17 last year, but whoever the 17th pick in the draft was last year, the Bengals, the offer that they made to Shamar Stewart was significantly less than the number 17 pick from last year's draft. Shamar Stewart and his agent looked at it and said, absolutely not. Now, a lot of rookies have not yet to sign their rookie contract, but they're still out on the practice field practicing. The problem is if they do get hurt, and I don't know what kind of clauses they have in these, if they do get hurt, they're still covered if something drastic happens, but it's still not something that the team should be putting the weight of the risk on the player. Don't put them in a bad position. Don't put yourself in a bad position. So I'm tired of how the Bengals are handling this particular situation. You're taking something that shouldn't be a problem and you're making it a problem. These are standard, easy rookie pay scale contracts. You just slide it across, let them sign it, dot their T's and cross their I's, right? That's all you have to do. Yes, I know what I said. The bottom line is at the end of the day, the Bengals continue to make everything that they do complicated. The Bengals should be, I see a lot of people defending the Bengals. I don't get why the Bengals don't get credit whenever they sign Jamar Chase to an extension, because all you're looking at is the final result of them getting it done. Let's not pretend that what they did was in good faith or that they did it for the right reasons. They spent way more on Jamar Chase than they had to because they don't operate with fundamental business practices. They have no clue what they're doing. They knew they were going to keep Jamar Chase, but they had no idea how they were going to do it as far as in a way that was going to make sense for both parties and to get it done in a timely and financially fit fashion. They didn't do that. They cost themselves money. Jamar Chase, instead of getting paid $35 a year, which we thought was a lot of money for a wide receiver at the time, they end up spending $40 million a year because they drug their feet and they did what they're doing now with Shamar Stewart, where does everything, and you're saying, well, Kenner, you've never owned a business, so you don't know what you're talking about. Maybe, but does everything have to be a negotiation? Does everything have to be made so damn difficult when you're the Bengals? You knew what the market rate was for a wide receiver in Jamar Chase. You still made it ugly. You knew what the market value was for a T. Higgins. I respected the fact that at one point it sounded like the Bengals weren't going to go the direction of T. Higgins. They had every right to do so, but they didn't trade him. Instead, it got so ugly that Jamar Chase's agent, who is also the same agent as T. Higgins, had to basically blackmail the organization and say, that Jamar Chase will not sign unless T. Higgins is signed. That's the only reason T. Higgins is a Bengal today, by the way, is because Jamar Chase threatened not to sign an extension unless T. Higgins was there. And again, as fun of a story as that is from a feature standpoint, it's a great feature piece on Jamar Chase having his teammates back. That is horrendous business practices. I would respect the Bengals more if it got a little uglier with Jamar Chase because they weren't willing to cave to we have to keep T. Higgins. They only kept T. Higgins because Jamar Chase blackmailed them into doing so. I have a huge problem with that. Not a fan of that whatsoever. The Bengals take stuff that's not a problem and they make it a problem. You have an elite, probably the best wide receiver in football, in Jamar Chase. You knew what the rate was for him. He knew it as well. And instead, you lowballed him. You pissed him off before camp, became a distraction, and was one of the many things that led to a 1-3 start last year in the month of September, a hole that they spent all season digging themselves out of, a hole that was so insurmountable that they won 5 straight games to close out the season and still missed the damn playoffs, because it's always something with the Cincinnati Bengals. Always. We're going to look at the opponents for the Bengals. We know who the opponents are for the Bengals. We're going to see the schedule release on Wednesday night. And we're going to talk a lot about who the Bengals are facing this upcoming season. I'm here to tell you, there is not one single opponent on that schedule that will be revealed on Wednesday that is a bigger and tougher opponent than themselves. They are undefeated against themselves. They always beat themselves. They are always their biggest opponent. Their biggest weakness is their inability to effectively run a franchise in 2025. Well, Justin, they seem to be doing better than your franchise. Yes, they lucked into Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase in back-to-back drafts. You won 2 games, got rewarded with Joe Burrow and T. Higgins. You won 4 games, and congratulations, you won Jamar Chase. How have they been since? They fail and whiff on every single draft. They don't do a good job as far as acquiring talent in free agency. Like, what are we doing? This Shamar Stewart thing's ridiculous. And this Trey Hendrickson thing is getting even uglier. And I'm stuck and torn in the middle on this. See, this is the thing. The Bengals don't deserve the benefit of the doubt in this situation because they mishandle everything else. That even in a situation like this, where I actually don't think the Bengals are in the wrong for, they just look bad anyways, because they always seem to not have a real good grasp on how to handle these particular situations. ESPN's Ben Baby covers the Cincinnati Bengals for ESPN, obviously. Had an update here, as well as ESPN's Adam Schefter and others throughout the day. The Bengals defensive end Trey Hendrickson said that the team has cut off all contact talks amid a dispute regarding a new deal. In a statement to ESPN's Adam Schefter on Monday, Hendrickson said no communication has taken place between my camp and the organization following the NFL draft in April. Hendrickson also said that the offers presented by the Bengals did not reflect the vision we shared and were promised if he continued to play at a high level. According to Hendrickson, discussions towards a new deal have stalled out. Last quote here. Trey Hendrickson also says, rather than using collaboration to get us to a point to bring me home to the team, they are no longer communicating. I have been eagerly awaiting a resolution of this situation, but that's hard to do when there is no discussion and an evident lack of interest in reaching mutual goals. That was Trey Hendrickson in his statement that was released earlier today. So I see all this, I hear all this, and I see people beating up on the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, Trey Hendrickson, 30 years old. He is entering the final year of his contract, coming off the best season in his career this past year. He led the league with 17.5 sacks last season and was named the Associated Press All-Pro team, marking one of the Bengals' first selections to that list since 2015. There was a historic year for Trey Hendrickson last year. And again, it was one of the few bright spots on what was the biggest deficiency on the team, which is ultimately what cost them the playoffs. Joe Burrow threw for 4,700 yards, 40 touchdowns, MVP caliber season. Jamar Chase, the Triple Crown. T. Higgins, a number 1 wide receiver that is being forced to be the number 2 wide receiver. That's the weapons that they have. The defense kept them all out. Despite historic seasons, career seasons from those 3 on the offensive side, it wasn't enough. Despite the great career season that Trey Hendrickson had last year, it wasn't enough. That's how bad the pieces are around these guys, okay? So what do you do in this particular situation? Trey Hendrickson wants an extension. He's 30 years old. I don't blame him for wanting an extension. He requested a trade last year, didn't get what he wanted, threatened to retire, ultimately didn't retire, then came out, said he didn't want to be a distraction, showed up to camp to give it his all because he thought he was playing for a Super Bowl contender. That's what happened last year. T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson both came out and said they ultimately wanted to put their beef to the side because they wanted to make sure that they weren't distractions for a team that ultimately had a goal of competing for a Super Bowl. They were barely competing for the playoffs. Trey Hendrickson put his beef with the team off to the side last year to not be a distraction for a team that had goals of competing for a Super Bowl last year. He put the team first, and it backfired. He's not going to put the team first this year. It looks like he could dig his heels in pretty deeply for this. Now, with all the criticisms that I've just thrown out there for the Cincinnati Bengals, I am here to tell you, I think the Cincinnati Bengals are in the right. As wild as this sounds, I've spent this whole segment bashing them. They don't have to communicate with Trey Hendrickson because, dude, take a hint. They don't have any interest in Trey Hendrickson. They have interest in his 17 and a half NFL leading sacks from last season. In fact, they have a lot of interest in him repeating and doing it again for the money that he agreed to be paid. This isn't like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins where they were due for an extension and you drafted them and developed them, and there's no way in hell that you should or would let them go. Trey Hendrickson was a great free agent addition a few seasons ago back in 2021. He more than delivered during his time in Cincinnati. But the Cincinnati Bengals have spent top dollar on their wide receiver room. They've spent top dollar on their franchise quarterback in Joe Burrow. They invested a ton of money into that offensive line, an offensive line that is not very good. And for them to jump and throw out another major contract for them when they have so many other holes to fill could be viewed as a problem for this front office. I don't. I think it's ridiculous. Pay your guys. But at the same time, just like the players have every right to not communicate with the team if they don't have an interest in staying, teams who don't have an interest in the player have every right not to hold communication there. Now, you could argue that they should at least let his camp know that they have no interest in negotiating. Maybe, yes. But this is why I know athletes would not make it in rural America. Our jobs and our bosses don't treat us with that respect. But yet we don't even demand it from our bosses, but yet you want to demand it from Trey Hendrickson's bosses. This is how corporate America works, and it's not fair. It's not right. I'm not saying he shouldn't be upset about it. He could be upset about it all he wants, but those who are out there bashing the Bengals for this, I'm all for bashing the Bengals. I'm not anti-Bengals when it comes to how they've handled this Trey Hendrickson situation, to be fair. It's messier. It seems messier because when you look at the Shamar Stewart situation, you look at the Jamar Chase and the T. Higgins situation, you look at the fact that Joe Burrow had to go on a media tour at Super Bowl Media Road to kind of get everybody's attention for this. This feels messy and like the Bengals don't know what they're doing. I don't think the Bengals know what they're doing, to be honest. But I don't think that they are wrong in how they're handling this particular situation with Trey Hendrickson. He's 30 years old. Pass rushers start to decline deep into their 30s. They're an organization that is not cash rich like the Browns and some of the other organizations who are willing to take a risk and pay heavy dollars for certain key positions like this one, like they did with obviously Myles Garrett, talking about Cleveland. The Bengals don't have that. They don't have that, oh, well, we screwed up money. What they have is, okay, this is the money we have, and we have to make sure that if we spend it, it has to be the perfect situation. And Trey Hendrickson, unfortunately for them, doesn't seem to be a perfect situation, which is wild, but that's the reality of it. That's just the reality of it. Clay Uso on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, he says, Eagles fans, they're too hype already. What up, Clay? Hope you're doing well. Adam says, Ohio pro football teams always win the offseason. I thought the Bengals would be dull and boring this offseason, but they've done a pretty good job of staying in the spotlight because of the way that they mismanage situations. Although this Trey Hendrickson thing, I don't think they've mismanaged. I might be in the minority on that. I'm curious your guys' thoughts. Ron says the Bengals defense will be in the bottom 5. Hope offense can score 30 a game. I mean, I think that's financially what they're telling you, that's what they're hoping on too. I don't know. I've bashed the Bengals a lot today for how they handle these contracts. Everyone's like, I can't believe you bashed them. They pay the guys. Who cares? It's not that they pay the guys. It's the way that they go about doing it, making everything harder than it has to be. I can appreciate an organization standing on their 2 feet and taking on the criticism and saying, we don't believe in signing and giving an extension to Trey Hendrickson. We're going to take on the crap storm. We're going to take on the criticism. We view it as we need him here for 2025. We have no interest in him being here past 2025. There's nothing to talk about. Now you're sounding like that, you're getting divorced, and instead of just getting a divorce attorney and getting all the paperwork filled out, you just keep doing the whole, please don't leave me. Please don't leave me. Please don't leave me. You just beg and beg and beg and say, nope, we're not going through with this divorce. And the Bengals have every intentions of going through with this divorce. They have no interest in a long-term solution. Finish out your contract for 2025 and then go chase that big money elsewhere. The Bengals have no interest in him long-term. And I don't know why that makes the Bengals wrong in this particular situation. 937-518-1410. 417 here in the Miami Valley. We'll step away for a few moments. I did see some calls coming in. I'm solo in the studio today. Call during the commercial break. I'll get you on hold. My apologies for that, but we'll get you taken care of. Are the Bengals in the wrong here for the Trey Hendrickson situation? I think that the Bengals were wrong for how they handled Jamar Chase. I think they were wrong for how they handled T. Higgins. I think they're wrong for how they handled Joe Mixon and obviously Jesse Bates. I think that they're wrong with Shamar Stewart and company. As I just said, they're wrong a lot. I think that they were wrong for going to Geno Stone to restructure his contract to free up $1.5 million so that they could do nothing with it. I think that's wrong. I think it's wrong to go to Zach Moss and rework his contract to free up a couple $1 million just so you could do nothing with it. I think that's wrong. I think that the Bengals are a joke of an organization that do a lot of things wrong. However, I don't think they're wrong for how they're handling this Trey Hendrickson situation. The Bengals, they don't owe Trey Hendrickson anything other than the money for the final year of his contract that he agreed to as well. If we're going to say that the Bengals gave him a bad contract, he's responsible for it as well. He agreed to it. I don't think Trey's a victim here. I don't. And I don't think the Bengals are in the wrong in this particular situation. I'm fascinated to see how this unfolds. Will he sit out? How long will he sit out? Will he show up to training camp? I'm fascinated by all of this. But at the end of the day, to me, the Cincinnati Bengals have done nothing wrong when it comes to Trey Hendrickson. Agree or disagree? 937-518-1410. We'll take your calls when we return.
season long, right here on Dayton's home of the Reds, 1410 ESPN Radio.
.425 here in the Miami Valley. You just heard it right there. We are Dayton's radio home for Cincinnati Reds baseball. The Reds are off today. They'll be back at it tomorrow. Reds 20-22 on the season, coming off of, back-to-back series losses, or I should say 3 straight series losses if you want to go back to their last home series to kick off the month of May. Remember, they had the Cardinals here at the tail end of April into May. They split with the Cardinals, which many people, including me, felt like they dropped the ball there, that was a situation where they should have taken 3 of 4 against the Cardinals, especially at Great American Ballpark, and especially with the way the Reds were playing heading into that series. But it got worse. Since the beginning of May, it's got worse, because then you had the Washington Nationals at Great American Ballpark and you dropped 2 of 3 against the Nationals. Then you had Atlanta. You dropped 3 of 4 against the Atlanta Braves. Then they were just in Houston over the weekend, and it got worse. They dropped 2 of 3 against the Astros. They are off today. But the worst part about that loss against the Astros was the way it went about. You look at game 2, they win 13-9. Well, what's wrong with that? 13 runs. What's not to hate? Games 1 and 3 are what I hate. Games 1 and 3, I think, are who the real Reds are. Game 2 is who the Reds decide to be once in a blue moon. Game 1 against the Astros, the Reds lose 3-0. The Reds then put 13 runs up on the board in game 2 the very next day, and they win 13-9. And then they had all their fun that day, because then the next day they gave up offensively because they lost 6-0 yesterday. To get shut out in 2 of the 3 games against the Astros, to drop that series, to drop your 3rd straight series. They haven't won a series since the Baltimore series, or since the Miami series, when they had the Marlins. The Marlins is the last series that they won, guys. That's a minute. That's been a while. That's unfortunate. I lied. I'm sorry. Not the Marlins. The Rockies. The Rockies series is the last series the Reds won. And keep in mind, the Rockies series, that's the last series they won. The Rockies have 7 wins. They just fired their manager. They're like 7-32. That's historically bad, by the way, the Rockies. But that's the last series win that the Reds have had. They've split. They had a chance to split with the Braves. They split with the Cardinals, but they have not won a series since the tail end of April when they took care of business against the Colorado Rockies, the worst team in baseball, might even be the worst team in the history of baseball when this season is all said and done. 7-32 is the record of the Rockies. The 7 wins this season, 5 of those wins have all been at home. So do with that what you will. Talking Cincinnati Bengals to open up hour number 2 here. Talked about the Shamar Stewart situation. Kelsey Conway with the Cincinnati Enquirer put out an update regarding the Shamar Stewart sit-out, if you will. She does highlight the fact that they have learned details of what's going on behind the scenes between the Bengals and Stewart in the negotiation process and why Stewart isn't practicing. Now, keep in mind, she says it's not uncommon for rookies to not sign right away. In fact, if you think about it, this season alone, there are 32 first-round NFL draft picks. Only 12 of the 32 first-round draft picks have actually signed their contracts with their new teams. So the fact that Shamar Stewart has not signed his contract with the Bengals, that's not really newsworthy. But what is newsworthy is the fact when your first-round pick doesn't practice in his first offseason program with his new team, which is what's happening here with Stewart, I think that's the problem. So Kelsey Conway says that the Enquirer has learned a couple things that has led to him not being comfortable stepping foot out on the field until this contract is done. Stewart and the Bengals tried to reach an agreement before rookie minicamp began. However, the two sides hit a snag in negotiations over roster bonus structure and the language in the participation agreement, a source tells Conway and the Enquirer. The crux of this issue is that the Bengals offer to Stewart came in at a lower percentage of roster bonuses than last year's number 17 overall pick. The Bengals came in at the same percentage. If the Bengals came in at the same percentage, Stewart would have participated while the rest of the first round picks finalized their deals. More on the Bengals' initial offer to Shamar Stewart. The Bengals' initial offer came well below what Dallas Turner, the 2024 17th overall pick by the Vikings, received. Remember earlier, I was like, it had something to do with how the 17th pick of last year's draft got paid. I did forget it was Dallas Turner who was drafted by the Minnesota Vikings, 17th overall last season. Pro Football Talk first reported that that's really what kind of led to some of the snag in the conversation is that first-round picks are given a 4-year contract with a preset salary and a signing bonus based on draft position. That's where the slot in which a player gets drafted comes into play. That's what I was saying earlier as far as why do the Bengals, everything they touch, do they have to make it messy? This is easy. All first-round draft picks get paid the same depending on the slot of where they're drafted, where the Bengals were picking. They didn't trade up. They didn't trade back. They drafted exactly where they expected to, and they picked a position that they knew they were going to go after, that we all knew that they were going to go after. May not have been the name that we thought they were going to go after, but the bottom line is this should not be hard. This should not be hard. A source told the Inquirer that if the team offered a more protected participation agreement, Stewart would be willing to practice while negotiations of his deal ensued. And this is why it is unrealistic to expect Stewart to participate in any of the voluntary practices until the two sides come to an agreement on either of the full contract, and especially when it comes to more protection in the participation agreement. So, of course, the Bengals, they respond. They give out their own statement saying we expect that we expect that as the other first-round draft picks get signed, that this will get resolved. Turner did receive 89.6% of his salary converted to a roster bonus last year. The Bengals offer to Stewart didn't match that, and that's the main reason why Stewart's only leverage is to hold out until the team's offer at least meets or exceeds what Turner received from the Vikings last year. That's really what it comes down to. And we hear this all the time. Well, the Bengals don't operate that way. I don't care. You know, if you work in any line of business, there's always some quote that you're going to come across. Your bosses will send it to you, you know, and I have to remind myself of this when we do certain things here, you know, in radio. The worst business phrase out there is, well, we've always done it this way. And a lot of organizations, they confuse what they think is their identity with just bad business practices. And the Bengal way, they think this is the Bengal way. Well, we don't do that around here. Well, then you're a problem. It's like when you go to cash is hard to, you don't come across people with cash very often anymore. Like everyone just, you know what I mean? Everything's plastic, right? You know how weird it is to go to a place and say, hey, we're cash only. Well, no one carries cash. It's just weird. Well, that's just how we operate. Okay, cool. That's awesome. Not very intelligent, not very smart, but more power to you. How many customers you lose in the process because, well, not a lot of people carry cash. But, hey, stick to your guns and your principles, buddy, because, hey, you know, that's just how we operate. That's the Bengals. Oh, you know, they take pride in the fact that this is how we operate. It's how we do business. Well, the players, they are more business savvy today than what they've been in decades past, and they're not putting up with it anymore. That's why Joe Burrow had leverage. He went on that media tour and put the pressure on the front office to get deals done for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Jamar Chase, business savvy, said, hey, I know you really, really want me. And I know you kind of want T. Higgins, but I really, really want T. Higgins on this roster. So if you want me to sign my extension, you have to give an extension to T. Higgins as well. That, to me, was one of the more fascinating findings during the negotiation with Jamar Chase and the Cincinnati Bengals, was that he was not going to sign an extension in Cincinnati unless they gave an extension to T. Higgins. I thought it was kind of ridiculous. I thought it was silly. I think it was dumb of the Bengals to cave to that, but they caved to it because the players have a lot more leverage than they ever have. But 86%. So the Vikings, because again, your money is guaranteed for 4 years on that rookie pay scale. So what the Vikings did is they paid him, Dallas Turner last year, the number 17 overall pick, they paid him 86.6% of his rookie contract up front as a signing bonus. And there you go. That's a common practice. That happens every rookie, every first-round pick, every team in football. That's what happens. And the Bengals' holdup is that they're not going to go that route. They're going to go a much smaller number. Why? Why do you have to nickel and dime every little tiny thing? It's frustrating. It has to be. As a Bengals fan, it has to be frustrating that that's the case. Like, you could think I'm mocking your team right now, fine. But, like, I think that you could be the biggest diehard Bengals fan listening to this show right now. I think you would even have to agree that it's pretty stupid the way that they operate and do business at times. I'm not a fan of it. And I know you guys aren't either. And I know I take a lot of subtle shots here and there. These aren't shots. This is just this. It's a fact. The Bengals operate poorly, and it costs them. They work so hard to save money that because of their stubbornness, it ultimately ends up costing them more. Their stubbornness to save money with the Jamar Chase negotiation ultimately cost them more money. Their stubbornness when it came to the T. Higgins situation ultimately cost them more money. The people that do everything they can to save every dollar that they can in these situations, because of their stubbornness, it ultimately costs them way more than just being business savvy individuals that know what the blank they're doing. If they knew what they were doing, they would have spent a lot of money on Jamar Chase and still saved money from what they actually ended up spending. Same thing with T. Higgins. Same thing with Joe Burrow if they would have got a deal done sooner. But he deserved his money. Everyone deserved their money. Just the Bengals went about it in the most Cincinnati Bengals way possible. So is what it is. The next thing when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals is going to basically be kind of with the schedule reveal coming up later on this week. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. That's the saying that everyone throws out in sports all the time. I'm here to tell you that the Bengals are the exception to the rule. And that's going to be what we talk about when we come back. The schedule release comes out later on this week. Wednesday night, we find out. We know who the Bengals play, but we find out when they play them. And I think if there's any team out there that the schedule release is more important for than anybody else, it is the Cincinnati Bengals. I think I truly need to see who the Bengals play in the first month of the season. In 2021, the Bengals were 3-1 in the month of September. In 2022, they were 2-2. 2023, 1-3. 2024, 1-3. They have gotten worse and worse to kick off the season every year since the Joe Burrow era began. More talent leaves the roster than comes onto the roster. More distractions in the off, more success with the team, more distractions in the off season. Mental, part of being good too is that there are a lot of players who are due up for contract extensions. Now you have all of that stuff that bleeds into one big distraction pit, and that's what the Bengals have to navigate through. I'm fascinated to see who the Bengals play in the first 4 games of the season, because just like the last 2 years, who they play and which Bengals team shows up will dictate what we're looking at when we get to the tail end of the season in December and January. More of the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers here in hour number 2. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back, 442 here in the Miami Valley, the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Make sure you stop on out at one of your local neighborhood Frickers for their Frickin' Lunch Combo for $10.99. The Frickin' Lunch Combo features many options such as the Frickin' Chicken Chunks, cheeseburgers, the charbroiled chicken wrap, and the Frickin' Chicken Wrap. You also get a side and a drink, all for $10.99. The Frickin' Lunch Combo is available Monday through Friday between 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Again, the Frickin' Lunch Combo, $10.99. That deal and special is available for dine-in and carry-out, so keep that in mind. When you're making lunch plans for the week, there's Frickers pretty much on every corner, by the way. Very easy to get to. So make sure you take advantage of their great Frickin' Lunch combo special, $10.99, 2 sides and a drink, as well as the Frickin' Chicken Chunks, all that fun stuff. So again, $10.99. Go check it out, your local neighborhood Frickers. Speaking of Frickers, this Friday from 3 to 5, Kev Nash and I will be live for a live show of the Justin Kinder Show with Kev Nash, presented by Frickers at Frickers in Huber Heights. Coming up on Friday, we'll be taking the show up north here from Kettering. So keep that in mind. We don't go out and do the show on location often, but we're doing that once a month due to our partnership with Frickers, and we're excited about that. We're hoping to see you there coming up this Friday, Frickers in Huber Heights. We're going to be giving away tickets to Buckeye Country Superfest. Let's see, what else do we got? Oh, yeah, Blink 182. Blink 182 is going to be at Riverbend coming up this summer. And or later on in the summer, I should say, as far as Blink 182 is concerned. But yeah, we got Blink 182 tickets. We got Buckeye Country Superfest tickets, Britt Floyd, Billy Idol tickets. We have Cincinnati Reds tickets. We have tickets. So come see us, and I'll tell you how you could win those tickets. Again, Blink 182, Buckeye Country Superfest with Jelly Roll, Kane Brown, and more. We'll see you this Friday at Frickers in Huber Heights. The schedule reveal for the NFL comes out on Wednesday night, and some people care about this, other people don't. I'm a big fan of it, and maybe it's because of the industry I work in. Maybe it's because I do a sports talk show, and as we are now sitting here in mid-May, and the Reds are really starting to piss me off and wet the bed the way that they are, content is becoming something harder and harder to find, and at least I think not who you play, but when you play them matters. And I think that's what's so interesting about the schedule release coming up later on this week on Wednesday night. Jay Morrison with SI covers the Bengals. He's going to join us on the show on Wednesday, the day of the reveal, by the way. Excited about to catch up with him to talk all things Bengals. But he's usually pretty good at trying to piece the schedule together a little bit of what we could expect. Who could the Bengals play in week 1? That's what I'm most intrigued by, about as well. When was the last time the Bengals had an opponent that they could set the tone for the season with a big win to feed off that momentum, right? You've played the Vikings in week 1 in recent years. You played the Browns in week 1, I think back in 23. So last year was the Patriots. Who could be that week 1 opponent for the Cincinnati Bengals here this season? That's what I'm curious about. So the Bengals home opponents, I know we've talked about this, but just to refresh, the Bengals at home this season at Paycor Stadium, for you Bengals season ticket holders, you will get to see the Bengals go up against Drake May and the New England Patriots. The Jets will be at Paycor. Jacksonville, the Jaguars. You'll get a chance to see Travis Hunter and company. Trevor Lawrence and the Jags will be playing at Paycor as well. Joe Burrow against Trevor Lawrence will be fun. Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears will be at Paycor, as well as the Lions and the Cardinals. And then, of course, your AFC North opponents all at Paycor Stadium. So you have that coming up. As far as the away opponents are concerned, could the Bengals kick off the 2025 season, on the road at Buffalo in week 1? Who knows? You still have to play the Dolphins out of the East. You do have a rematch with the Broncos this year. They will. How about this? The Joe Burrow having to go to Lambeau, I think, is pretty cool. I think Lambeau is one of those. It's like anytime in baseball when you got to see teams go play at New York, at the Yankees. You got to go to Wrigley, Dodger Stadium. There's something about you take pride when you beat the Yankees at home. You love when you beat the Cubs at home. You love when you beat the Dodgers at home. But when you go to Dodger Stadium to get a win, it just feels different. It feels different when you go to New York and get a win. It feels different when you win a series in Chicago at Wrigley. And that's Lambeau to me. When you go get a big win on the road at Lambeau, that a win's a win, but it just feels bigger when you're able to do that. Could Joe Burrow and the Bengals be on the road against Jordan Love and the Packers at Lambeau in week 1? That could be a possibility. The Vikings, and then, of course, your AFC North opponents, as far as that goes for your Bengals team. Who are they playing week 1? A tone setter, if you will. Could it be an AFC North opponent? Obviously, yes. I mean, any of these teams are on the table for the Bengals to play in week 1. It was announced that the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles will kick off the 2025 season on Thursday Night Football, the spot that was held down last year by the Ravens and the Chiefs. A great way to kick off week 1 of the NFL season. Looking forward to that. Especially George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, hopefully a healthy Dak Prescott and company. We'll see what ultimately happens there. But the Bengals, and we talked about this on Off the Bench earlier. I do think that as far as week 1 goes, is it going to be a boring 1 p.m. kickoff, or will it be, on a Sunday Night Football? Will you be Sunday Night Football right off the bat? I wouldn't be surprised to see Josh Allen, MVP of last year, going up against who many would deem to be the favorite to win MVP this season in Joe Burrow. I could see the Bengals at Buffalo week 1, Sunday Night Football. The Monday Night Football slate. Could they be that, on Monday Night Football? Possibly. I think there's a lot of intriguing matchups. I think we get bored with I love divisional games, but I think, that's not very creative when you think about divisional opponents playing one another on these primetime games. But I think last year, the Ravens and the Bengals, they were money both times. It came down to the final moments. It came down to special teams and the kickers, right? It came down to all the drama, everything. Both games were absolutely phenomenal last year. I could see the Bengals and Ravens kicking off the season against one another Sunday or Monday Night Football. Or maybe it's just a boring 1 p.m. kickoff. Who knows? But I am very intrigued to see how that's going to unfold when it's all said and done. The other thing, too, trying to predict how many primetime games the Bengals are going to get. That's something we'll focus more on later in the week as well. But, we were trying to figure out which of these teams which one of these opponents for the Bengals would be primetime. Everyone's throwing out the Bills, throwing out the Packers and Lambeau, of course, right? Like, the list goes on and on. Travis Hunter and the Jaguars. A lot of opportunities for games that could be primetime candidates. Depending on who the Browns quarterback is, will determine whether Bengals-Browns is a nationally televised game as far as a primetime slot. I think if Shedeur Sanders is the Cleveland Browns starting quarterback in 2025, I do think every time Joe Burrow and Shedeur Sanders go head-to-head, I think that's primetime caliber stuff right there. I think that's big time, especially if Shedeur pans out. Shedeur has had a very impressive, rookie minicamp. Do with that what you will. I don't know what I'm doing with it, but at least it's been nice to have football activities that people are generating opinions from versus all the crap that went on during the draft and everything else. But if Shedeur ends up being the guy in Cleveland, I think that'd be pretty damn cool to see that be a rivalry moving forward. If Shedeur pans out in Cleveland, Shedeur against Joe Burrow. And it's not just because, Cleveland would have a franchise quarterback. It's the personality of Shedeur. Joe Burrow just has an aura about him. He has a coolness to him. He has all these things that, he has that charisma, that it factor. Dylan Gabriel's not winning an it factor standoff with Joe Burrow. All right. Kenny Pickett sure as hell is not. And by the way, Joe Burrow was criticized for having small hands. He doesn't have smaller hands than our guy Kenny Pickett over here. Unbelievable, right? Like, there's nothing there. Joe Flacco, obviously, I'm a Joe Flacco guy. If he's the Browns starting quarterback this season, I'm all for it. But the Browns have to decide, are you rebuilding and figuring out what you have, or are you trying to compete and win football games this year? I don't see how Joe Flacco could be the starting quarterback for the Browns. It has to be Shedeur Sanders, in my opinion. And Shedeur against Joe Burrow, if that's a AFC North rivalry for years to come, the fact that you have Joe Burrow versus Lamar Jackson twice a year, and to potentially have Joe Burrow against Shedeur Sanders twice a year moving forward, the AFC North, very, very interesting. I'm no longer saying it's the best division in football. I don't think that they are, but I do think they're the most interesting, especially if Shedeur ends up being the guy in Cleveland when it's all said and done. But again, that schedule release comes out Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern is when we'll find out not who the Bengals play, but when they play them. And I think that matters. Again, 2021, the Cincinnati Bengals went 3-1 right off the bat, right? They jump out to a hot start that season. And then they go 2-2 in 2022. In 2023, they go 1-3, and then 1-3 in 2024. These hot starts or these slow starts have become a problem for the Cincinnati Bengals. And I don't know people want to blame Zach Taylor. People want to blame the coaching. I have a hard time with that. You're professional football players. You shouldn't need your head coach telling you, hey, guys, let's play hard in week 1, huh? Like, I think it's a collectively bad effort across the board with the Bengals when it comes to why this team's not prepared to play good football to start the season. Can you imagine how good this Bengals team would be if they truly, especially with now Joe Burrow, a seasoned veteran, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, like these are seasoned veteran players now. This isn't the learning curve anymore, these guys. Like these guys are now all on their second contracts. They are all heavily and handsomely paid. These guys are proven, experienced players who have played in every big game imaginable, including a Super Bowl, including back-to-back AFC championships, including multiple big divisional games, winning the division multiple times. I know they've missed the playoffs the last couple of years, but can you imagine how good this team would be viewed at across the board if they didn't consistently have these 1-3 starts? And Joe Burrow's the quarterback for these 1-3 starts. 2 years ago, he was out injured for the back half of the season, but he was their quarterback to start the season. Joe Burrow is not good in the month of September. It is on Joe Burrow to find a way to get this team off to a hot start. People want to blame Zach Taylor. I think he's semi-responsible. Yes, he's the head coach. He's ultimately going to have to fall on the sword if it doesn't work out this year. But to me, I think it's on Joe Burrow more than it is Zach Taylor or anybody else. $55 million a year, highest paid quarterback in the NFL. To me, it's Joe Burrow's responsibility to get this team off to a hot start in the month of September because he's been the reason why they've gotten off to slow starts every year in the month of September. Whether it be because of his injury history and him not being able to work out and practice during the offseason and then using training camp to really get underway. And then, you could talk about lack of reps in preseason. You're not going to get true game reps in preseason anyway, so it's going to have to be in the regular season, and basically September's almost been treated as such at times. But Joe Burrow has to be healthy. Joe Burrow has to be on the field. Joe Burrow has to be ready. It's not going to be nursing a wrist injury, not rehabbing a wrist injury, not rehabbing a leg injury, not having, not kidney stones, whatever he had a few seasons ago where he had, an appendectomy. I mean, it's always something, not his fault, but it is always something. I don't think people who get injured that it's their fault, but it is always something. And we'll see if this year, without there being something distracting this team, are they going to be able to get off to a much better start? We're going to find that out, but we're going to find out the teams and the schedule coming up on Wednesday night. All right, the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Hour number 3. Coming up next.